Alright, so hopefully you've been following along in our video series and you know what a tracking template is with Google AdWords. You know what these UTM parameters are, you know the best practices for naming them or setting them. You know what a custom parameter is, you know what a value track parameter is. And if you watch the advanced video, you know how to concatenate parameters and whatnot. So this is the tracking template that I'm going to use. It tells me that everything came from AdWords. It tells me the campaign name, the ad group name, and the ad name along with the keyword. So to set this up, you have to define custom parameters at each level and set those, and then use your template at the account level. So that's the short rundown of everything we've covered up to this point. So what we need to do now is whenever we're running these ads, how do we actually get the data inside Infusionsoft? So let's do that. Let's go to the account level. Let's test our tracking template. So that way we'll get a couple of these URLs. And let's test the Independence Day ad. So we'll click on this ad, or at least the testing version of it, right? We didn't click on the ad, but this is the URL that it creates. So this is the data up here that we want to capture. And the UTM term, which is the keyword, it's empty, but that is because we didn't type in a keyword. If we were actually testing it on a live Google search and clicking on a live AdWords ad, it would populate a keyword. But since we tested it the way we did, there's no keyword value. So, so if you can just pretend that we just clicked on an ad, we came from AdWords, it was the summer campaign for the Independence Day promotion, that's advertising for a free account, and there's no keyword, but that's okay. So we need to capture this data. So to do that, you can, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this, but I designed iTracker 360 to capture this tracking data and store it directly with Infusionsoft. So iTracker is probably going to be your best bet, but you can, if you find another option, that's great. But I think iTracker is probably the best when it comes to taking this data and putting it in Infusionsoft. So to do that, we give you a little piece of code that you put on your website. Now, if you're using WordPress, there's a WordPress plugin. I already have it installed and activated with my license key. But if you're not using WordPress, so if you're using like Lead Pages or ClickFunnels or something like that, you would use a JavaScript snippet. So to do that, once you sign up for iTracker, we have you set up your API key so we can connect to Infusionsoft. And there's a quick start video that kind of explains everything, but I'm not going to go into detail with everything because we have a quick start video. But you would have to set up these custom fields, so that's just a click of a button. And then we give you the tracking snippet. So this is the code down here if you're using something other than WordPress. But if you're using WordPress, just download the plugin and activate it with the key. Once we detect it on your website and it's running somewhere, we'll pull in a list of domains and URLs where we found it running. And what you can do is click on one of these landing pages that you would be driving traffic to, and you can toggle these parameters. So we basically just add parameters to the end of it. And to test it, just open the test link. So that way there's tracking data, and then just submit your web form. So once you submit your web form, we should capture that data, and then you can move on to the next step. So right now, this thing's still turning. I haven't actually tested my site, so iTracker hasn't had any data come through. And I can tell you that if you go to the API sync page, there's no data. I have no data here. So we basically have to give iTracker some data so it knows that you've completed the setup, right? So I'm not going to test it with one of these URLs. I'm going to test it with one of these URLs from AdWords just for testing. So I'm going to click on this Black Friday one. This is the data we're going to capture, and I'm going to do test 77 at testing.com, and I'm going to submit this. So once you submit that, verify I'm not a robot, then Infusionsoft should have the contact data. So let's go look at that contact real quick. It's test 77 at testing or test.com or something. There we go. So we didn't put in a name, just an email, so there's no name. And if, quickly, if we go back here, this turned into a green thumb because eye tracker captured some data. It processed it, and it also uploaded it or pushed it into Infusionsoft. And this is the data that it captured. And so let me close that tab. So here's the contact record. The lead source was set to AdWords. It was the fall campaign. We clicked on the Black Friday one, and it was about lead source tracking 1. So that was the first lead source tracking ad. We pushed all this data into these custom fields, and then shortly these tags will be applied after that process runs, which takes about a minute. So let me just refresh, and it looks like the tags are not there yet. You'll know if, like it says, queued for processing. It hasn't ran yet because it's queued for processing. So here pretty soon, that post will run, and these tags will get applied. So I'll just pause the video and wait a second for that. Oh, didn't even have to pause it. So here's the tags that got applied, and you can enable or disable these tags. If you don't want all these tags applied, you can turn it off. And then we also capture the data in these custom fields. And if you set up some other custom fields, kind of a copy of these, we'll copy this value into whatever field you want us to, and then these will never get these down here will never get overwritten, but these up here will get overwritten. So this is like the last point of entry. The lead source is like the first point of entry, and some people like to preserve the custom fields with the first set of data, so we'll keep that there. And then if you want every conversion in the first, second, third conversion, that's where you'll have to use tags to capture that stuff. So all that stuff can be configured directly in eye tracker. Under these advanced settings, you can say, hey, this is how I want my lead source set. Put the medium first, then the campaign, then the source, or whatever. So this is the option that's the default. We enable cleaner lead sources, which will kind of just clean up your lead sources a little bit. I recommend enabling that. For the tag tracking, if you don't want all those tags, just uncheck all this stuff, hit save. There's some cross-domain tracking if you run into that. And then for the time zones, you can enable Geo Tracking or enable time zone tracking. So the Geo Tracking will capture the city, state, postal code, and country, and then the time zone tracking will set the time zone if they don't already have a time zone. So all that can be turned on or off, and then in the lead source you can also disable lead sources if you don't want eye tracker setting lead sources. So there's a bunch of other settings, and but as far as setting up eye tracker to capture that data, all you do is just put our tracking code on your website, on every page of your site, like where they land on and stuff like that. And then if you're using like lead pages where there's a lead box that pops up, if that lead box renders an iframe, you'll have to put our code inside that iframe as well, inside the lead box, which is real simple to do. People often miss that step, and then they end up emailing us for help, and we help them out real quick. So if you run into any issues setting up eye tracker, let us know. I'll help you get all this stuff set up. If you've watched the video series and you still kind of like, you're like, man, I wish you could sit with me and just kind of hold my hand through this whole process and help me get the tracking set up, sign up for an Ultimate account. It's $47, and then reach out to me. I'll book a meeting with you, and we'll sit together on a go-to meeting, and I'll walk you through everything. So just let me know if you have any other questions. Hopefully I've given you enough information so you can just go do all this stuff by yourself. But let me know. My name's Casey. It's Casey at eyetracker360.com, and I hope you found this AdWords video series useful.